Okay, but I mean, we're living, without getting too cliched about it, in a pretty global economy right now. And I was just in Phoenix last month, actually, and I was downtown on these huge blocks with these enormous streets and not a soul to be seen, and it was absolutely soul-destroying. And apparently, I'm told it's the 5th largest city in America right now. I have no idea where all of these people are, but they're not visible. And they, and so the question is, is there any conceivable way that Phoenix is ever going to be able to compete with Paris?
No. But Phoenix can be a lot better than it is. But Phoenix can rebuild itself if it gets over its addiction to growth for growth's sake, the illusion that real estate development creates wealth, the illusion that mortgage finance creates wealth. That was Phoenix's problem. It thought it could build an economy around these illusory things. No, but Phoenix can build a real economy. It can reset itself and build a real economy. And that's what cities, that if they don't do that, they become ghost towns. Slowly but surely, they become ghost towns, or perhaps more accurately, people who have means and ability leave. And the people who are left behind are the people who can't move.
I know that it's always great to traffic in that kind of optimism, but really, I mean, what's the probability that Phoenix is going to reinvent itself and manage to become a vibrant and dense work-live community?
Well, see, I feel like you're more of an economic fatalist than I am. And I'm the one who's been accused of being an economic fatalist. I'm not at all. I think that every city and every community has the opportunity to rebuild itself and focus on its real economy. But if it doesn't, it declines. Slowly but surely, it declines. I'm unwilling at this point to write off either Phoenix or Detroit. I'm willing to let them have a go at remaking themselves. Are there strong forces that are acting against them? Of course. Are there very strong global forces that we have to be aware of that are reshaping the world economy, that are concentrating people in more vibrant, more exciting places? Sure. But that doesn't mean that these places have to be written into the dustbin of history. They have the capacity, and they have a lot of people. They have the size and the scale that they can remake themselves. Whether they have the will is not something I can supply or suggest, but I'm willing to give them a shot if they want to undertake it.
It seems to me that the greatest, fastest, most vibrant, and most exciting pace of urban creation that the world has ever seen is going on every day right now in China.
Absolutely.
And we have these huge cities appearing out of nowhere, and they're incredibly inventive, and they're producing an unbelievable amount of ideas and materials, and they have, cheap energy, and they have cheap labor, and they have high-speed rail, and they have everything, again, which you've been prescribing. So, if it's, what between Europe already being there to a large degree, especially in the north, and China creating all of these cities more or less overnight, again, I ask, what's the comparative advantage of most of the US here? Or even non-Toronto Canada, for that matter?
Well, but Felix is saying something very bluntly and baldly that people get very nervous when they hear it. And if an urbanist even suggests it, they might not like it. That is, the forces acting on the world are concentrating population and assets. That is a given. That is a no-brainer. Just as globalization reshaped industries and wiped out whole national industries and gave us global industries, the same exact thing. The world is not flat. The world is incredibly uneven. And Felix is and the forces of concentration that most of us don't pay attention to. We pay attention to forces of dispersal. Things are moving offshore. There's outsourcing. The forces of concentration in this global world to get density and speed and scale are so great that it challenges. Jane Jacobs, when I met with her, said, one thing the U.S. has a lot of second and third tier cities. It's great, but how do they survive? And I think, Felix, to be really candid, all cards on the table, I think that is a legacy of U.S. economic and financial hegemony. That's where that comes from. An extremely rich country that could afford a pattern of development that was far more decentralized than the physical concentration of economic assets would allow. So now, yes, the U.S. is going to become much more concentrated and much more spatially unequal. But my God, we have to do something or attempt to do something to rebuild some of those cities or to give them potentially, if they want, not federal bailouts, a new lease on life. So that's absolutely the case. With regard to China, you know, I've thought about this long and hard. I have a whole section on the rise of new competitors in the book. And I've really tried to parse through the rise of Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, Singapore, Tokyo, Seoul. I was just in Seoul. And I'll tell you, what you see as a problem in Phoenix, you see just the opposite in Seoul. You see a dark gray city coming to life. I mean, it's the most amazing thing I have ever seen as you watch a Phoenix decline or a Detroit decay, to watch Seoul rise and the plans for the future, which are just mind-bending. What the book says is I think we're still a generation, perhaps 2 generations, away from the supplanting of the great North American and European financial and economic centers. And there's a long section in the book talking about the rise of economic and financial centers on a world scale, the rise of London, the rise of New York. There's a great book by Youssef Cassis that details that. And what that book says, and what I was able to try to ascertain, is that the rise of great financial centers trails the rise of a nation as an economic center by at least a generation. So I think they rise. I think they become more important. But we're at least a generation away from Shangkong, if you will, displacing New York and London. That said, economic activity in the United States and in Europe will become more, and Canada, will become more concentrated if we don't, and we need to be aware of that and take steps to try to handle it better.